Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our monthly webinar session. Thank you very much for registering and joining us today. We have another exciting and engaging discussion today with a fantastic panel. This month's session is titled Mastering Open to Buy Strategies for Fall 2025, Confident Planning in a Complex Market. I want to remind you all that we are recording today's session, and the recording will be available after the session. I'll also send out an email to all registrants with that recording. I want to encourage everyone to ask questions. On your panel within the software, you will see an option to ask questions. So please ask questions to our panelists, and we'll be more than happy to answer those questions at the end of the session. We have a dedicated Q&A time slot. Right now, I wanted to introduce you to our panelists for this month. We have Jeff Sward, founding partner from Merchandising Metrics, as well as Dimitri Goikman, CEO from Ant USA, as well as Jeff Dillon, Director of Operations from Ant USA. We're also joined by Michelle Salerno, Chief Growth Officer from Celerant, as well as Greg Shyhan, Senior Sales Executive from Celerant. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. And right now I want to pass it off to our distinguished panel who will get us started.
Awesome, Todd, thank you. So we have a lot of different registrants on today, a lot of retailers on today. So a lot of you are using our Celerant software, whether it's our Cumulus Retail or maybe our Stratus Enterprise platform. And a lot of you are new to us and not really, probably don't know that much about us. So a couple of quick comments about who we are here at Celerant. We are a retail software provider for both in-store and online. So what really sets us apart is we can come in and really be a retailer's single technology partner. Point of sale, inventory, complete retail ERP software for the brick and mortar side of the business, plus e-commerce, plus even digital marketing. We have 7 offices all over with over 225 team members. Our main office is in New Jersey. That's where I work out of. We have California, Georgia, Texas, and international as well. The 2 logos that you see on the bottom, those are our 2 software platforms. So Cumulus Retail is our lighter, more cost-effective solution for the smaller single store businesses. And then Stratus Enterprise is our more advanced solution for the multi-store or even just single stores that have a bigger business with custom e-commerce. So we really pride ourselves on helping retailers get access to more innovative software, regardless of where you sit and regardless of how many store locations you have.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate the overview. And Todd, appreciate the introduction also. Ant USA, we've been providing merchandise financial planning and open to buy software solutions for 30 years. We've been in this space for quite some time. How do you like the picture of Dimitri and Michelle at recent NRF?
Chocolate.
You also see that we have 2 products at the bottom, Retail Optia and Buyer's Toolbox. And similarly to Celerant, we fit any size, any need through providing solutions to analyze your hierarchical merchandise business. It's really a profound impact when we can get our hands on your data and show you ways to create an effective open to buy.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Sward. I'm a retailer at heart. I grew up in, excuse me, grew up in the world of Macy's and Saks Fifth Avenue, switched over to specialty stores, Abercrombie and American Eagle, and then switched over to wholesale with brands like Ralph Lauren and Donna Karan, Tommy Bahama. These days I'm consulting with brands and retailers about what I call strategic merchandising. And it's really all about optimizing product mix between rates of turn, rates of sale, levels of risk, how to put together the best possible assortment for your customer. So thank you.
And congrats again to Jeff. Jeff was recently recognized as a top retail expert for, I think, the 3rd or 4th year in a row. So congrats, Jeff, and we're honored to have you here with us. So this is our 3rd series of this monthly webinar that we've been hosting. And many of you have come every time, and some of you are new this month for the first time, so welcome. We like to really make these sessions more interactive, and we ask a lot of poll questions and then kind of shift our conversation based on who's on and how y'all are answering. So our first question, we've got quite a few polls today. What percentage of your fall inventory is already purchased? So Todd, flip us over, please, to the first poll. Y'all can just select your answer once Todd, there we go. What percentage of your fall inventory is already purchased? 100%, all of it, 75%, maybe half of it, 50%, 25%, or maybe you haven't even started yet. So select your answer there. And once Todd sees that everybody has answered, we will flip it and show the results. All right, Todd, you can probably close it out there. And let's see, I have a feeling it might be right in the middle. Oh, we didn't see the results. Todd, if you click show results, we should see the results. Well, we see the question. Well, I'm going to assume, maybe Todd will figure it out in a second. I'm going to assume that 50% is the most favorable response. Probably some, maybe totally. There we go. Oh, I was right. I was right. So 75% of you, sorry for that glitch there. 75% of you have completed half of your purchasing. Let's see, I'm sorry, 50% of you, and then 17% have completed all of it, with 17% have done 25% and 17% have done nothing yet. So Dimitri, walk us through this and these results, knowing that the majority have done 75% of their purchasing.
That sounds like most of the fall buys for most people already in place. So, but what about a sixth has taken on all the risk? In other words, you know what's going to happen 8 months from now. And about half is mostly bought, but I'm assuming that it's either they're buying actively or you're maybe holding a little bit back. So it'd be interesting to talk about the trade-offs between being committed, this early, because again it's February, right? So you're 4 to 6 months ahead of the game, versus holding back some and trying to figure out, where the optimal point is. So let's talk about the reasons why, right? Why? So this actually applies, right? Most people said I'm mostly bought. So the question is why, right? Now, there are obviously, there are obvious reasons. The vendors won't ship you unless you buy it in advance. You buy what you bought last year and you know what you need to buy, so therefore, well, bother. There are long lead times, especially if you're importing, and you basically, you can't help it, right? So the question, usually if you buy very, very far in advance, if you have to, you have to. If you don't have to, you have to think about sort of how to, what are the trade-offs? The first part that we see in a lot of scenarios, and obviously this is not applicable to everybody, but maybe some people that'll hit home, is that people kind of buy for the season, right? So that we will always, you'll see in previous discussions, as this discussion, that we advocate what's called time phasing your receipts. So this is a fancy way of saying make sure that your orders come in over time and not all at once, if you can help it. That's a question to you. In other words, if you wrote those POs, are they all for early delivery in the fall, or are they staggered, let's say, by months? The usual optimal strategy for most people is to stagger those POs so that not all your inventory comes in at the beginning of the season. You don't have to, carry the load. Oftentimes, you don't have to spend the cash up front. So staggering deliveries or time phasing POs is a very, very common technique. The question, the next two questions are about risk. So some people will commit upfront because the vendors will give you all great terms. Buy it now, pay it for it in October. It's still a commitment, and it's only you can judge whether that's appropriate risk. But it's money. Risk is money. So in other words, the more risk you take on, kind of the more it costs you. So the conversation about risk and managing risk, because retail buying is gambling for the most part. You buy it and you hope that they'll buy it from you, right? So the more you bet up front, the bigger the gamble, and maybe the bigger the win. So the one thing I would leave you with is, did you do the same thing last year and the year before and the year before, and is it therefore just a habit? Because we do see a lot of this kind of risk taking as just habitual repeat of what happened the year prior. Let's think about that. Anybody else?
I'll jump into the comment on product risk, and that is retailers evaluating their mix between low risk product and high risk product, and how much of each category they buy and when they buy it. In other words, buying low risk product that is supported by a lot of data on a long calendar is not as risky as buying high risk product, high novelty, high expensive, with that same lead time. So if you can buy yourself some time to buy the higher risk product later, it just gives you that much more time to make a more informed decision on higher risk product.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into the next slide, where if you're not fully bought, and then that little light bulb moment on the bottom there that we just basically jumped to, buy time before product, conserve your cash, right? So Jeff, why don't you walk us through a couple of the bullets on this slide for those that have not fully bought?
We'll go with this, Jeff, for a brief moment. And what we're getting at here, and this can be backwardly applied if you've bought the majority of your inventory also, but take a step back and let's calendarize our business. Let's plan strategically. Let's plan our demand flow and our demand volume well. Let's plan it by class, subclass, category. Let's really build some collaborative calendaring of our business with our teammates to decide how much we should buy when the time comes to pull the trigger on a PO. So this is all about that strategic view of the business with a collaborative approach, using a comprehensive tool to bring it all together. Dimitri or Jeff, anything else?
Speaking about the calendar, I can talk about, that's actually really important. One of the interesting thing about sort of planning and open to buy is a lot of these methods don't actually depend on software. You didn't expect me to say that, did you? Mm. So, a lot of these practices have been developed back in, in the days of green sheets and pencils. So if you talk about a calendar, here's the most common, first of all, a planning calendar or an open to buy calendar is one of the most powerful tools you can establish, even using pen and paper. It really pays for itself. So the classic scenario that the larger retailers were steeped in this discipline, were all about optimizing, the dollars, do is as follows. Before the year starts, develop a sales plan. So that's your, think of it as an original plan. You might do it in November, you might do it in December, you're busy selling, you might do it in October, you're busy selling. Take a guess at what you're gonna sell next year, or at the very least, this fall. That has to be the starting point for everything. And put it aside. That's your best. Then once you've traded through the high season, so some of you, the high season might be spring. Most people, it's, obviously Christmas, New Year's. Sometimes it's, depends on the product, right? So you kind of adjust your expectations. It sounds like work, but in reality, what you're really doing is you're taking the early guess and you're saying, I'm going to create sort of like a revised plan, right? What did I think was going to happen versus what's really going to happen now that I'm up close? And then on a regular basis, and this is part of the secret sauce that the professionals do all the time, on a regular basis. For some people, it's weekly. For some people, it's monthly. For some people, it's quarterly. But it has to be several times a year. Review earlier assumptions, review where you're going, and adjust. Because if you turn the wheel a little bit, it's like driving a car, right? If you have to yank it, you have an inventory panic because you have too much stuff at the end of the season, or not enough, you yank it really hard. And that creates all kinds of bad side effects, depending on the problem. If you make adjustments over time, slowly, what happens is you can kind of, get there smoothly. So consider establishing a planning and buying calendar. And the other trick that people do is they basically look at the timeline. They say, for example, let's say for those of you that are bought for the fall, consider when you start buying for fall 2025 next year. Consider when you start buying for spring 2026. Make sure your budgets are in place before the first orders are placed, ideally, right? That makes them useful as guardrails for the merchants. So I can't say enough, and I probably should stop talking about it right now, about the idea of a preseason plan, right? Preseason direction, and then in-season revision on a regular basis. Best practice for larger retailers is once a month at the beginning of the month.
Yeah, and Jeff Sward, can you speak a little bit about the vendor programs? Because this is something we were talking about yesterday that we should hit on, where it might be tempting, depending on the program or the promotion that your vendor is running, and why you want to maybe really consider what those programs might look like for now and when you're in season.
Yeah, again, it goes to, I'll place an exclamation point on having a formal time and action calendar by category or even and by vendor. Because what you might buy now, if it's your only purchase, could change dramatically if you only buy a portion of what you intend to buy now. Wait until you're in season and have better current selling data. And the expression buying time, you may pay a higher price later on in the calendar for making those purchases, but what you will have bought in the time is you will have bought the opportunity to collect better data. You will know best sellers and worst sellers. So if you can have a program vendor by vendor by vendor of how you're going to trigger in-season purchases based on a plan that was developed at the beginning of the season, that is a really smart allocation of open to buy dollars that you set up early on, but you don't trigger until later in the season.
Yeah. And the last thing you want to do is overbuy and have it sit.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit more about the vendor dynamic that many of you have. We respect that there's a yin and a yang here, and we even talk about that more later. But some of your vendors are coming to you this time of year and saying, here's our fall program. You better get while the getting's good, or you may not be able to get it. Or Or if you commit now, we'll give you this tremendous discount. Or if you commit now, we'll give you this tremendous discount and extended payment terms. All of them have a really, really enticing and compelling offer. And many of them we respect. You need to jump into because you've had experience with that vendor and their items become unobtainium in October, perhaps, and you don't want to lose sales. So we get the yin and the yang. Just understand that those of you that are exceptionally vendor centric, that you rank your vendors. You decide which of those vendors you're going to commit more to and maybe some less to. Negotiate with those vendors. Their printed program isn't necessarily gospel. Steer it to your favor however you can with the receipts, receipt timing, payment terms, ability to return merchandise at the end of the season versus marking it down and sitting on it. Really, really, really analyze your vendor engagement, your vendor relationships. And yep, some of them you got to roll over because they're the gold out there. And if you don't have it, you won't sell it. Sure, pick some and roll over. But really look at them all hard.
Yes. All right, we're going to keep it moving because we have lots more to cover. So now we're going to shift a little bit. Well, not much of a shift here. We're talking about reordering seasonal products. So are you ordering everything ahead of the season, or are you saving cash to order throughout the season? So next poll question, are you setting aside budget for in-season reorders? So we'll flip it over to the question here. Again, are you setting aside budget for in-season reorders? Yes, definitely. Somewhat. No, not at all. Or I'm not really sure what we're doing. No wrong answer here. Let's see what we have. All right, a couple more seconds. All right, Todd, go ahead and show us what we got. All right, you gotta share that. There we go. Okay, so look at that, 50-50 split. Yes, definitely. Half of you, the other half, somewhat. All right, well, good. No one is not setting aside budget for in-season orders, so that's good.
Who's not telling the truth? The people that are fully bought for the fall.
I said no wrong answer here, right? Because we expected to see.
I'm just asking, who is not telling the truth? If you're fully bought for the fall, does that mean you have an extra budget to overbuy because there'll be a Beanie Baby effect or or if you're getting the guns and the ammo, all of a sudden there'll be a run on your favorite model? Like the people that are fully bought, how does that work? I'm curious if anybody can put it in the chat. How can I explain that?
All right, so in-season tips. Well, we'll wait. We'll see if someone drops a note in the chat. Todd can read it for us. So assuming that most everybody has saved some of their budget for in-season, let's talk through that. Who wants to kick us off here? Jeff Sward?
Well, I'm gonna go back to a previous comment we made because it is that important, and that is have a mechanism, have on your calendar dates, times where you assess how things are going, and that's a broad term intentionally, how things are going compared to what we expected. So again, on November 5th, today, we expect this to occur. Let's look at everything from today up to November 5th and see how we're doing. Are top level demand plans where we expected them by category? No, they're not. Clearly, we don't know, but they're wrong. Adjust them. Adjust what is occurring in your tabulated green paper so that you can see the fallout then of your inventory position and where you're short. Where do I need? Where are there opportunities to capture the next few weeks of heavy demand and react to it? At that same time, where are there opportunities to cancel or delay POs for those that are the opposite, which is always the case? Jeff, Dimitri?
Yeah, I'll jump in with a thought on that plan for product testing and potential reorders. I will confess that when I was a department store buyer, I thought I was a genius, and I picked all the winners up front, and I would just let it all roll in and reorder my way to fame and glory. What I later learned was that I was not a genius and I didn't pick all winners, that I would have been smarter if I set up a program where if I wanted to have 4 or 5 key items for peak Christmas selling, for instance, I would buy 10 to 12 for on floor August, September. I would read the rate of sale on the 10 to 12 and reorder into the 4 or 5 bestsellers for Christmas peak selling. The bottom line of it is no matter how smart a buyer is, they never bat 1,000. And the smartest thing we can do is to let the customer tell us what they really want in season. Now, that's a lot easier to say than it really is to execute. But to the degree that you can have a program that relies on in-season data to reorder into versus buying it all up front, that's going to end up with an ability to maximize sales. But as important, it's going to minimize the end of season residue inventory that turns into very expensive markdowns.
Jeff, I like that, and you're reminding me of some of my past experiences in product testing. And there's lots of ways of doing it. I like your way. Another way is, the assortment will have 12 in it throughout the entire season. So maybe buy 50% of the 12, but do run a test in August or September to get the her impression of the tree ornaments you intend to offer. Then once you get a mix of the 12, finalize your buy with that knowledge that you certainly didn't have before the test. So those of you that are seasonal, especially if you're doing product development, it's a great opportunity to do some testing.
So let me add 2 lazy components to the secret sauce. And I say this because, look, we work with, I don't know, tens of billions of dollars worth of retail volume, and thousands of planners out there use our software. So we have a kind of a broad perspective. What we see is the smaller retailers, medium-sized retailers, and even the huge retailers all kind of do the same things. They all think, everybody thinks you're unique, and everybody is unique, else we would all be part of one giant, 100,000 store chain. But the habits are not. So there's 2 things that I would recommend, especially on in season. One, review when I talked about staggering deliveries, right, or time phasing receipts. The flip side of that is that some of the receipts come in late. So in the industry, it's called backloading, right? Industry term. So if you're backloading year after year, you always end up with too much, end of season inventory that needs to be cleared, which means look at the deliveries that are scheduled to almost miss the season peak, right? I don't know what it is in the fall. Let's imagine it's back to school. You're buying for back to school, and you got back to school goods that are still coming in October. Don't do that. You have a chance to either change the delivery dates or cancel in advance. That's the stuff that's going in for markdowns, backloading. And the other thing, again, sort of the secret sauce that does not require necessarily sophisticated software, but you can do it in Celerant all day long, right? Always look at your past due on order.
Mm-hmm.
If it didn't come in on time, make sure you still want it, right? We see scenarios where people have, in a bigger chains, $10 million of past due on order. It's just sitting there. Nobody cancels the orders. They still take it. when it's significantly past due, it's coming in for a discount. I'm not talking about like guns. I'm not talking about, stuff that you must get whenever you get it and you sell it. I'm not necessarily even talking about some, if you're selling lots of Nike, you will sell whatever Nike you can get, all that kind of stuff. But generally, people simply forget to check past due or no. In other words, it didn't come in on time, and you're like halfway through the season, you're about to drop a lot of cash on markdown products. So backloading and past due, those are two slightly buried pots of gold for most people.
Yep. All right, let's switch gears. Next poll question. Do you follow an open to buy and inventory management strategy? So this is easy, right? Yes or no? Or what does that even mean? So do you follow an open to buy and inventory management strategy? Yes, no, not sure what that means. All right, Todd, let's close it out.
Just waiting a couple seconds for
Oh, it's still,
final. Very
still
good.
good. Oh, okay. 88% yes. 13% not sure. Nobody said no. I hear Dimitri chuckling. So Dimitri, go ahead.
Well, because if you go to the next slide, what is that next slide? Right. So keep going.
One more.
Right. Start with what we know.
Everybody does it, yes, regardless of what you call it. Yeah.
Right. We know that that's the case.
So even the people who weren't sure, the guess is you're probably doing it in some way or another. It's just a matter of how you're doing it and what tools you're using and resources.
Yeah, some people use a napkin. Some people, their spouse is the buyer and they can't say anything anyway. And so the open to buy strategy is usually it's my wife buy whatever she wants. And I'll just run the play. I'm being a little facetious. So, what?
Oh, Jeff, you're on mute, Jeff.
Well, that is not a joke. We have that.
Yeah, we do see that now and then. So in other words, if you cannot enforce open to buy, don't do open to buy, right? If your buyers do what they want to do anyway, then I would say two things. One is you're leaving a lot of money on the table, like a lot. Like whenever we look at somebody's data, even like a $10 million retailer, there's at least a few $100,000 that are just like unattended to. That's a lot of money. And there are ways to nudge people in the right direction. I'll leave that to Jeff and Jeff.
Open to buy. I mean, one of its huge values from a enterprise package standpoint is the guardrails that Dimitri mentioned. It keeps everyone heading towards the same corporate strategic goals. We want creativity and category excellence and dominance, but we all need to do it within the confines of a common goal and a common plan. So
balanced.
Yeah, it really is.
And I think to that point, the part of open to buy that I think doesn't get talked about enough is that last point of managing monthly inventory levels, meaning that throughout the course of the season, there are entry points, there's peak inventory, and there's exit points. And sales and markdowns may ebb and flow, but you know where you want to be on inventory levels. So if you're managing your flow and your markdowns and your promotions and your discounts to hit those inventory levels, that's what you have to do. You don't want to end the season with more inventory than you plan to do. So in season, you're managing flow and promotional activity to be sure that you end the season where you want to end it. That's one of the most profitable actions you can take throughout the course of the season.
Actually, let me add to that. This is another one. We interface to a lot of retail systems. A lot of them don't show you historical, like there's no way to get a historical inventory levels. But whenever I see it, I'm just like flabbergasted. Celerant actually is not one of them. Celerant's good. Shameless plug. No, seriously, right? We can actually pull, end of February inventory for last year out of Celerant or a couple of years ago, and you can say, my sales might be doing well in the category. I'm 20% up, but my inventory might be 45% up. Am I really doing well? So managing inventory levels on a regular basis, comparing them to last year by category is absolutely critical. Again, your competitors are doing it. They're doing open buy, and everybody with better merchandising systems or better use of merchandising systems always wants to know how much did I have last year at this time, or when am I peaking? So that inventory endpoint, again, the people who are obsessed with planning do it weekly, but that's like, full-time planning teams. But at least monthly, a lot of the closeout retailers, really, really big volume, they might even do it quarterly. But the idea of looking at your year and your seasons with inventory goals throughout that calendar and comparing it to where you were last year and a couple of years ago is critical to making more money.
And also when we say everyone's doing it, whether you're doing it on a napkin, as Dimitri joked, or you're a master in Excel, or maybe you're using a retail system like ours, like what we have at Celerant, and in that scenario, it all goes back to the data and the product data, and all that data from our system every day gets sent to Ant USA in this case, of course, and then all that data in real time is being sent to be put into this merchandise planning application. And that's how easy this becomes when you're using the right technology to really integrate it and have that access to that data and the resources that the gentlemen here are talking about. All right, so next slide, we're going to talk about the benefits, specifically the financial benefits of open to buy. And really, when you're doing it the right way, what it could actually help in terms of ROI. Jeff Sward, you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, I think that the way I'm used to using the overall open to buy system is, like we mentioned earlier, is not just at the category level, but the style level. And we just talked about managing the inventory levels. My view is looking at every week, the weeks of supply, style by style, so that if you've got planned exit dates and you've got weeks of supply to that exit date, that you're managing your flow and your markdowns to those exit dates, so that you're taking surgical markdowns on the worst sellers that need it the most, versus taking broad and sweeping category markdowns. You're taking markdowns at the style color level, where your weeks of supply is telling you you need to take a deeper markdown earlier to be able to hit the exit date that you really want to hit. But don't take the markdown on navy, because you're going to run out of navy. So the whole system is just telling you to be surgical about markdowns and promotional activity by keeping an eye on those desired inventory levels and exit dates.
They want to build on that. So weeks of supply is a common forward-looking calculation. It basically says, how long would it take me to sell this inventory given sales expectations? You do it in spreadsheets. You can say, this is what I'm going to sell per month. Here's my average monthly sale, right? I divide, over the next, say, 3 months or 6 months. assuming that you create a sales forecast or some kind of sales expectation, you basically divide your inventory by that, and you get a rough idea how long your inventory would last if all you did was sell it. Obviously, you do other stuff. In fact, there's a whole slew. This kind of gives me a thought, right? This whole slew of most common retail KPIs, retail planning KPIs. I think we have a document someplace. Maybe at some point we should distribute it. Not today, but it might be useful to people to try and understand how people manage that with the definitions.
We can create a session on that, perhaps.
Yeah, make that another series.
Yeah, and one last comment here. It sounds basic, but all of this is really geared towards preventing big surprises. We should never ever be shocked by some anomalous inventory position. If we're continuously monitoring, continuously managing open POs, continuously evaluating what we need when, we should not have any shocks.
All right.
And I'll just end.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to end with a comment on end of season stock. Any retailer in any product category ought to be able to walk out to their floor right now, literally today, and take a look around and say, is this really where I wanted to be on February 12th? Or should I have taken more markdowns earlier? Or should I have brought in more conversion product? This is a really tricky time of the year to evaluate, but now is a really good time to examine the inventory position and all of the decisions that led to today's inventory position, and how next year's open to buy needs to be managed differently based on the lessons we're learning literally right now.
And do that test often.
Yeah, we were just working earlier today with an apparel retailer's data. So here's an example. I'm sure nobody on this call is in that boat, right? But last year they're out of season, end of sort of Christmas season, right? Last year the out of season stock was about 20%. This year it's about 40%, right? So the end of season carryover for most people is an absolute margin killer. And again, it happens why? People often bring in too late, they often don't test, and they often don't deal with past due on order that slips in anyway.
Yep. And this next slide is really showing a visual of the yin and the yang, as we keep calling it. But really, it is how it's a balance and a collaboration, really. The category planning and reporting on the left side, the item reporting and operations. You know, that right side, the item reporting and operations, that's more your retail software platform, all the data, all the product data, everything that's in your retail system. Combined with, on the left, category planning and reporting is your merchandise planning, your Ant USA. Greg, talk a little bit about in your retail software, whether it's Celerant or not, whatever system they're using, how they can look at that data and how valuable that is in this big picture.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to reiterate again, you know, something you touched on is that you really need an inventory system that's capable of feeding the data in a timely manner into these open to buy and planning systems. You know, without that, you're just sort of going off in a direction that is going to be too difficult. But once you get that information from the category, the planning system, the point of sale systems become, you know, essential in drilling down into the data for your assortment performances, and it'll help you, you know, monitor how that's going, make decisions that the open to buy systems and planning systems are telling you that you need to do, and you know, it'll help you implement your purchasing strategies. So having a good, powerful reporting system with drill down capability that's got a wide breadth is really going to help things.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, let's go to the last one here. I think this is our last. Well, we may have 2 more poll questions. We got 15 minutes left. We got to speed it up. Who is responsible for your open to buy and inventory planning? So let's see what we got here. We've got my buyers, my leadership team, outside consultant. We have no dedicated person, or it's a collaborative effort. So go ahead and select your answer. And Todd, let's pull it up just for the sake of time. All right, so 67% of you said it's just my buyers, and 33% said it's a collaborative effort. So Dimitri, walk us through this.
So the 67% that say it's your buyer, you're probably overbuying. So the buyers are typically inclined towards optimism, because if the buyers don't believe their product, they wouldn't buy it, right? So the buyers are naturally inclined towards optimism. And the ideal scenario is that you at least give buyers those guardrails, or sometimes it's somebody in finance, or sometimes some merchandise analyst that's supposed to help the buyers. Again, in terms of best practices, the larger the organization, obviously, the more payroll they can afford. But what you want to do is you want to collaborate between financial goals and the buyer's inclination to buy the product. So again, for the 2/3 of people that said it's the buyers, a large percentage of you are probably suffering from excess inventory, especially at the end of the season. I'm making a prediction, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what we see a lot, right? You need somebody to balance, collaborate between financial people always want to buy less. They want to save money to open another store. They're afraid of cash risk. They're pessimists. That's a whole different session about the mood of the merchant team. Financial people are always like, just replenish.
Well, it reminds me of the session we did last month where Jeff Sward, your image of the passionate, more artistic type versus the financial planning, numbers, very different mindsets, very different people, and blending that together and really collaborating is the key to making sure that you're balancing it and not going too far in any one direction.
It's an awful risky situation where the buyer is bought 6 months out and the buyer decides what's the right thing to do. You got to have excellent buyers. If they're artists, nobody can argue with an artist. But there are only so many Da Vinci's and Michelangelos out there, so.
All right.
Let me I just want to add that it's often thought about as a collaboration between planner and buyer. And I would add to that stores organization and supply chain, because the stores organization is really, with some hard listening there, is going to help you understand how different assortments work and don't work in different locations. And the supply chain goes to what we were talking about earlier in terms of how do you buy time to make more decisions later? And that's a partnership with supply chain and factories and vendors and what they're going to warehouse and not warehouse. So it's really a lot more collaborative than a lot of people want to think it is. It's not just buyers, it's not just planning and buyers, it's the whole network to truly optimize content.
All right, I think we have, one more question. And this is really going to help line us up for our next session, which will be in March. So how is your product assortment divided between basic and seasonal items, or I could say seasonal and non-seasonal items, basic, non-seasonal, whatever you prefer to call it. But is your product assortment mostly basic, balanced mix? Maybe it's a 50-50 split, mostly seasonal, or unsure. So go ahead and select what applies best to your assortment. And once, Todd, you have all the entries, let's flip it up and see what we got. All right, so mostly non-seasonal, 60%, 20% has a balanced mix, and 20% mostly seasonal.
Good cross section.
Yeah. All right, so our next session is going to be talking about how to balance this. So in the image here, you see long-term shelf life versus short-term shelf life, right? Seasonal versus non-seasonal. You got your nuts and your bolts, and you got your bird feeders. So that's what next month's entire session is going to focus on. We can literally talk for probably a whole hour just on that one topic, which is what we'll do next month. We have all of these sessions recorded. They're all on our YouTube channel. We're going to email them all out in the email after this session, as well as this recorded session. So I encourage everybody to stay tuned, watch this again, or just catch up on some of the prior sessions too, and join us next month. Anything you guys want to add on this as an intro, or should we go to questions? We got 9 minutes left. Dimitri, give me a little nugget on this one.
Little nugget. So first of all, on the previous question, that's an unusually high basics. So that's, so you take that's how you manage the risk today. If you don't plan, you can always buy the basics. The basics are typically lower margin, somewhat lower risk. Well, if I don't sell it, I'll sell it next year. So that's probably a partial explanation for a lot of the people that are bought out for, or mostly bought out for the fall already. If, on the other hand, you're mostly bought out, if you're mostly bought out and it's mostly seasonal and it's all at the buyer's discretion, again, I would say hold on to your wallet, because that's a heck of a unstable situation. But a lot, there are known optimal mixes for different types of businesses. If we knew, which kind of business we're talking to, whether it's, fashion apparel, or sporting goods and guns, or hard goods, or gifts and footwear, each one of those business profiles, and within each of their major categories, there are typically more or less optimal mixes that we can talk about next time. Kind of identify them from athletic footwear versus fashion footwear, men's versus women's, or bird feeders versus nuts and bolts, right? So yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and it's also about building a hierarchy, right? Because a lot of people don't think about the product hierarchy. The product hierarchy is one of the tools and methods that's used to balance your assortment design. So plenty to talk about.
So that brings us to the end of this month's discussion. We've got our contact info here. We're all eager to continue conversations if you'd like to have a one-on-one or see a demo of either of our systems. We've got both Jeff's contact info up here, as well as Dimitri and myself. We also have celerant.com/AntUSA if you want to learn more specifically about Celerant and/or AntUSA. Todd, let's go ahead and see. We got 6 minutes left. Let's see what questions we have that have been coming through.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, we had 2 questions come through. First one being, how much does it cost and how long does it take to put in? I guess it's 2
How
questions.
much does it cost? That is always the #1 question. So Dimitri, I'll let you go first, because we do have a lot of our retailers on here, so they are probably asking about yours, but then I'll go next on the Celerant side.
So the glib answer is it costs about 1/100th of what you can make with it in the first year. Which is really true, actually. And
Uh-huh.
we can prove, we can typically prove it if we can look at your data. But in terms of outlays, retail Optia starts at a couple of $100 a month, and it's not like you have so many classes, therefore it costs that much. It's just you can add more, you can spend more, but in our higher end Toolbox AP product configuration starts at about $1,000 a month, but it's far more capable. It can go down to style level. So I don't want to get too salesy, but literally, I'm not kidding, that when we see people's data, it's if it costs you 1% of what you make with it, it's a lot. So it's a very high return on investment.
Mm-hmm. And on the Celerant side too, we have Cumulus and Stratus, much like Dimitri was talking about retail Optia and Buyer's Toolbox. So Stratus is our more advanced retail software solution. Typically our Stratus customers, clients are integrating to the Buyer's Toolbox version of the Open to Buy. Our Cumulus clients using our lighter, more cost-effective solution are typically integrating to the retail Optia, which is the newer solution from Ant USA, which is really meant to be a lighter, more cost-effective solution. And same on our side, Cumulus could be a couple of $100 a month, depending on, of course, how many stores, how many point of sale, whether or not you have e-commerce. And Stratus, our more advanced system, it's going to vary, again, based on all those factors. And it's our more comprehensive system. So both can be SaaS or the purchase model, whatever you prefer.
Great. And final question is, I'm using Celerant software. What's the process?
Oh, the process to get started with Ant USA. So I'm not sure if that's Cumulus or Stratus, but either way, it doesn't matter. If you are interested in getting started, you can reach out to Dimitri or Jeff, talk more, start there, learn more about Ant USA. On our side, we just have to set it up for your business. So once you've had that conversation with Dimitri and Jeff, you let us know, and there'll be a work order on our side. We just have to set up the integration, and then your data will be flowing from our software behind the scenes. And once it's set up, you won't have to do anything on our side as far as getting the data over to the Ant USA team. Dimitri or Jeff, you want to add on your side the process?
Yeah, I mean, just start off with that conversation. Let's talk about your business and see how it fits into all of these conversations, so that we can speak more intelligently to you about your needs and outline how we think we can help, and go from there.
And for anyone who's currently using our software at Celerant, we're happy to do a proof of concept where we can help pull specific data out of our system. And then Dimitri, Jeff, I know you guys offered a free, I forget what it was, a couple of months ago when our first webinar we did, but like a free proof of concept where you take that data from our system and just kind of give a feel for what type of reporting and recommendations you can get as part of the process.
No, absolutely. It's our preferred method of talking to a retailer and establishing a relationship is sort of like, you want a new garage, right? We'll build you your garage in case you like it, right? And in case you want to keep it. So if we can get the data out of the merchandising system, then we would speak to your data. And we have very effective tools. We've been doing this for a long time. It's no sweat for us to to stand up a planning environment, down to store style level or category. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever is useful to you, and then it's really a lot of fun, because then we talk about 52 weeks of supply versus 13 weeks of supply, and inventory that's not matching sales, and it's more fun for us as well. And obviously, obviously you can see the case for your own business, because everybody is different, even though some of the things are the same.
Well, and what sounds like fun to you, Dimitri, might sound a bit daunting to some of the retailers on this call, which is great, because then that's all the more reason why you want to reach out to guys like Dimitri, Jeff, because this is fun for them. This is their passion and what they love. And frankly, that's why we're doing this series, because we could talk about so many different aspects of merchandise planning and open to buy. But little chunks at a time is what's best, so that everybody can sort of learn and grow and evolve from it. So join us next month. We haven't yet set the date. We will set it soon. We'll send out emails. Next month, March session will be focused on short shelf life versus long shelf life, and all that we just highlighted there. So thank you, Dimitri, Jeff, Greg, Todd, everybody who joined. Have a good one. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye all.